So the year 2025, which is next year, is a very interesting year if you follow something called the Deagle Report. This is a report that was put out online by a very shadowy figure, last name of Deagle, who was associated or affiliated with all kinds of agencies. We'll take a look at this in just a minute. I have a little article I'll be reading excerpts from. But basically, what the article is stating is that the year 2025 will see a significant decrease in population of basically the Western world, the United States, Great Britain, Australia, Canada, parts of Europe, and so on. And someone brought this report to my attention again. I'd heard about it and read about it a number of years ago, and then it just sort of kind of came off my radar. I wasn't thinking about it very much, and my forte really is Bible study and putting out videos on the Bible. And the closer we get though to the end, more and more current events seem to apply to the things that we read about in the scriptures. So if you're familiar with my timeline, I actually calculate the end time events from the return of Christ, from his second coming, which is on the Day of Atonement. How do we know it's the Day of Atonement? Well, if you go to Daniel chapter 9, verse 27, it talks about someone who confirms a covenant, and this person has 7 years. At the end of these 7 years that Israel will have returned to the Lord, and they will never again abandon their faith in the Lord. And these groups of 7 years are actually groups of sabbatical years, which always begin in the fall at the Feast of Trumpets, and end the following year, the day before the Feast of Trumpets. These are not weeks of years that can be over any other period of time. They're sabbatical years, which is why they're in groups of 7. Okay, and then once you've got 7 groups of 7, you have a Jubilee. So Christ is going to return at the 10th Jubilee of the 70 weeks of Daniel. And that would be then on the Day of Atonement. So we have a Day of Atonement, and I'm putting it at 2028 because we know Israel only has the last 3.5 years of Daniel's 70th week to go. The first 3.5 years were when Christ came in the fall feast, was baptized, was anointed by the Holy Spirit, who began the process of confirming God's covenants to the patriarchs. He put an end to sacrifice and offering through his death on the cross. Then there's this big gap, and the 7 years will start up again at the time of the abomination of desolation. And that is when the last 3.5 years, 1,260 days or 42 months, will take place. So that would be right here. Okay, so Israel only has 3.5 years left. There is no 7-year tribulation. That was something that people had assumed was there because they, took that last 70th week, and they didn't understand that the first 3.5 years actually applied to Christ, leaving only 3.5 years. That's my understanding, and I have so many videos on Daniel's 70th week, the Messiah and Daniel, and so on. Check my playlist if you want to know more. I'm not going to go into detail about that here in this Bible study, but suffice it to say that if Christ is returning, he's coming back on the Day of Atonement. And if Israel only has 3.5 years left, he can return in 2028 on the Day of Atonement. And then we would subtract 1,260 days that the remnant of Israel is in the wilderness, and we come to April 19th, 2025. And this is the date for the abomination of desolation. And all this is stuff that is knowable. The return of Christ is knowable. The day when the actual day of the Lord begins is not knowable, but we do know the window of time. It's sometime between the abomination of desolation and the Day of Atonement. So what I'm doing is working the timeline backward, and I'm not going to include all of the events from Revelation today because I'm focusing in on the ones where we see a lot of death, where we see a lot of people dying. Because the Deagle report actually shows let me see here. that the UK would see a population decline of 77% in the year 2025. And the United States would see a population decline by 68.5% by the year 2025, which is the year that I'm showing a lot of people are going to die. A lot of people will be gone by that period of time. A lot of people will die between 2024 and 2025. Germany is predicted to see its population declined by 65.1%, and there will also be a huge decline in other Western countries, including Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. This Deagle person he was a doctor, Dr. Deagle, and he has links to the CIA, to the Pentagon, Rockefeller Foundation, and Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum. And I'll leave a link to the article that I'm using here. So this rather infamous Deagle forecast of death was on the internet up until about 2020, and that's when this forecast was taken down. But of course, we have the Wayback Machine and the Internet Archive, and you can get this stuff back again. So someone brought it to my attention that 2025, according to Deagle, was going to be when there was this huge population reduction. And, that is what I see happening if we're raptured this fall. Now, it's recently come to my attention that somebody, some person out there wants to make videos about me, and that I'm making these predictions year after year of a rapture coming. What I have basically is a timeline, and it's a timeline of order of events. And if Christ returns in a certain year, then the order of the events stays the same. You just change the dates, accordingly. The one thing that I have always stated every year, every single year, is that the rapture cannot take place until there's been a severe, extreme war invasion of Israel. Okay, and we're seeing the birth pangs for that right now. But if you don't have a war, that's what the travail of the woman is. It's about having this incredible invasion or war in Israel. That's the travail. And at the end of the travail, that's when the child is born, and then the male child is raptured to God into his throne. That's all part of the sign of the dragon. If you don't have the war, you don't have a rapture, and it's just that simple. So that's something that I've said all along. No war, no invasion, no rapture. And then what we do is we just move the whole template forward to the next year, insert the new dates that would apply. So that's what we're doing here. In 2017, we had the beginning of the end as far as the book of Revelation goes. We had the appearance of the Revelation 12 sign in the starry heavens. That's Revelation chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. A great sign appeared in heaven. A woman clothed with the sun. That's the constellation Virgo. The moon at her feet. Okay, the crescent moon at her feet, and a crown of 12 stars over her head. She was with child. That is when Jupiter, the planet Jupiter, was in the womb of Virgo for 9 months, and then it was in retrograde motion, and then made its exit on September 23rd of 2017. That was the big sign in the heavens. And remember, God said in the book of Genesis that sun, moon, and stars are for signs and seasons, for days and years. So we're looking at these heavenly bodies, the movement of the heavenly bodies, as God's clock, as his clock and calendar, so that we know where we're at, prophetically speaking. Okay, and another time when he used the sign of stars was the Star of Bethlehem. And of course, we're all familiar with that. So in 2017, we had the great sign, the sign of the woman, and 7 years almost have gone by. We're in September of 2024 now, and on September 23rd of 2024, it'll be exactly 7 years since the Revelation 12 sign. So that was kind of a 7-year warning if we go this year, and I think there are plenty of indications that it's very possible for us to receive our immortal bodies and be taken into heaven this fall. But like I said, unless there is the sign of the dragon and basically all the components of the sign of the dragon, which is the next sign. And you'll notice I have a little question mark here. I don't know if this is going to happen or not. But if it does, then we will know that we are about ready to be changed and be raptured. So the sign of the dragon means that first of all, that Satan is going to take his tail and cast a third of the stars to the earth. We're not talking about the stars in the heavens right now. We're talking about stars as angels, stars as messengers. A third of, I believe, Satan's angels will come to the earth. And that is something we will see. And then there's going to be this incredible invasion or war in Israel. And my personal opinion is that it's the Gog-Magog war, but it could be something else. And Israel will be all alone, basically. This is how it looks when you have nobody to help you and you're all alone. This is kind of what labor and delivery is all about. If you're a woman about ready to have a baby, you're the one that has to do this. You're the one that's suffering the pain. You're the one that's going to have to deliver the baby, and really the amount of help that you can have is pretty nominal. So the other thing is, once labor is over, you deliver a baby, and then that is when we are going to be changed from mortal to immortal. We'll be here for the length of time that a child is in this sort of no man's land of 7 days, and then on the 8th day we'll be caught up to God into his throne, raptured. So the day we leave is the day that seals 1 through 4 are opened, trumpets 1 through 4, and possibly the 5th trumpet as well. And there is a lot of death that's going to take place in those seals and trumpet events. A lot of death. It affects a quarter of the earth for the seals, and the trumpets will affect a third of the earth. Okay, and people are going to die. Lots of people are going to die from pestilence and plague and starvation, the effects of war and violence, and so on. It's going to be a lot of death. Okay, and that would still be in 2024, because the events associated with the sign of the dragon are in the fall. Okay, they're in the fall. The woman who was the sign of the woman is in the fall. We're talking about Virgo in the fall. So we're talking about in the northern hemisphere, we're talking about in the fall, which would be September, October, and the window for the rapture is up until November 20th. There's a window of opportunity, a window of, when we can expect the child to be born, and that would be any time between mid-October and mid-November. So that's the window of time that we're looking at, that I'm looking at anyway, for the rapture to take place. And then immediately after that, there's going to be a lot of death, a lot of chaos, a lot of destruction, a lot of war. It's going to be really bad. A lot of people, though, getting saved. That's going to be the good news, is that there are so many people who are going to be saved, and so many people who are going to be willing to lay down their life for Christ and for the testimony. Revelation chapter 2 talks about 10 days of martyrdom. And this is a literal 10 days. All time elements, all units of time in the book of Revelation have to either be taken allegorically, metaphorically, or taken literally. And a lot of people want to pick and choose. Well, you can say that an hour is a metaphorical hour, or this 10 days is a day-to-year conversion. 1 day equals 1 year, and so we're talking about 10 years. And, it gets all really weird. The simplest thing to do is to just take the book at face value. When it says an hour, it means an hour. When it says a half hour, it means a half hour. Half hour in silence in heaven is a half an hour. If it's 1,000 years that Christ rules and reigns, it's 1,000 years. If the two witnesses lie dead for 3.5 days, we're talking about 3.5 days. All units of time are literal, and you can't pick and choose about that. You have to decide, one way or the other. And the only way that makes sense is if you actually take all the units of time and make them literal. And actually, that, I believe, is is the best way to do it. So I've done some videos on time, and if I remember, I'll leave a link to those in the description box below. We have a 10-day period where there is going to be persecution of believers, intense persecution of believers. And the reason why is this: it's because so many people have come to the Lord. Millions and millions of people will have come to the Lord. And this is called the time of tribulation for believers. This is not the great tribulation for Israel. This is a great tribulation for God's people, God's saints, God's people who believe in Jesus, who are going to be martyred. And there's going to be a 10-day period of time. And this reminds me of back in the days of Esther, when they cast lots, and, Purim, it came up to a certain date that people would be allowed to kill Jews. And basically we have the same thing going, is that there's going to be this 10-day window of time when it's going to be perfectly acceptable to kill Christians, and Christians will be fair game. And millions of Christians will die. These are the fifth seal martyrs that we see under the altar. They're given a white robe, and they're told to wait until their fellow brethren, who are to be killed like they are, comes in. And so that's how we know that we're dealing with a window of time, that there's going to be a group of people being killed over a period of time, and that this comprises a group. And then we see this group in Revelation 7. They are the great multitude standing before the throne of God, wearing white robes, the robes that they were given. And in Revelation 7, it talks about how these are people who keep coming into the presence of God, because as they die, they're given a white robe, and then they come into God's presence. This is a group that John could not number. There was no way to count how many people they were. There were so many people dead. Millions are going to die. And we are basically in the spring here of 2025. That from the time we're raptured until the time of this period of martyrdom, there's only about 5 months or less. Okay, about 5 months. At the same time that Christians are being killed down here on earth, Michael is going to be warring with Satan and his angels in heaven, and at the end they will all be cast out. Christians will be in heaven, and Satan and his angels will have been cast to the earth. So there's this big switcheroo here that happens just prior to the abomination of desolation. All right, so then we get to the day of the abomination of desolation, which is April 19th of 2025. And that's when the sixth trumpet will blow. And the sixth trumpet, when you read that in Revelation chapter 9, what you see are a third of mankind being killed. So the first rapture has already taken place, and all those Christians are gone. And then we have a bunch of people dying that are affected by a quarter. The seals affect a quarter of the world. And then we have a third of the earth being affected by the first 4 trumpet events, and lots of people dying. And then we have sort of the crescendo of millions and millions and millions of martyrs dying. Lots and lots of death. And then finally we get to April 19th of 2025, the sixth trumpet, and a third of mankind being killed. The things that I'm seeing here actually dovetail really well with the Deagle report, with what they were talking about, this huge population reduction in the year 2025. How could the United States lose so much of their population? How could so many Western countries lose so much of their population in such a short time? Well, part of it is the wars that are going to be happening, and that's all part of the seals. Part of it is going to be these cosmic events that take place that affect a third of the earth, water being made bitter and the grass being burned up and so on. And then you have this intense persecution of all these people who've come to saving faith in Christ. And they so believe in the testimony of Jesus, which is the book of Revelation. The spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus. This prophetic word is the testimony. And the bottom line for it is that Jesus wins. And anybody who is willing to stand for Christ, believing that Jesus is going to win in all of this, that's the reason why they're going to be killed. Also, in this period of time, by the time you get to this date here, April 19th of 2025, every single foul, fallen, evil, angelic being is going to be on the earth. All the fallen angels will be here on the earth. All the fallen angels who've been locked in chains in the pit will be on the earth. We'll have all the demons, any kind of foul, evil, satanic, demonic, fallen entity will be on the earth, as well as hybrid, earthborn, the hybrids. They will also be here on earth. And people are going to be very rare, and people will be required to take the mark of the beast because he's going to set up his version of the millennium. If you want to have access to food, which is currently being stored in underground bunkers and so on, you'll have to get the mark. And people will gladly do it because there's going to be these miraculous signs that are going to be worked. And also the beast is going to die and come back to life again. And death isn't going to be normal during this period of time. There's going to be a lot of strange things happening. And I've done a video on that death will not be normal during the end times. A lot of things are not going to be normal. Just the idea of all of these fallen entities being on the earth during the end times. This is something that really doesn't get talked about very much. People talk about the beast and Satan and the false prophet, but they don't really talk about what is it going to be like when all of those fallen angels from the days of Noah, prior, to the flood, when all of them are back on the earth again. And the spirits of all of their fallen sons, their fallen offspring, the giants are on the earth. Okay, and all the technology and information that these fallen angels gave to men prior to the flood, they have all of that and more. And they're going to be utilizing that information during the end times. So when we're talking about the days of Noah, we're not just talking about rainbow flags and things like that. What we're talking about is the presence of actual fallen angels here on the earth. All right, so I'll leave a link to the Deagle report, and there's a video and some things that go along with it. And I'm going to put this disclaimer that, it's just for educational or informational or entertainment purposes only. I put this out there for your discernment. I can't say that, that this report has any validity to it. I'm just putting it out there because it's curious how the dates line up with what I'm seeing. And I think it's very possible, if things continue to escalate at the rate they're going, that we will be in heaven before the end of November. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope you'll check some of my other videos out. And don't forget that I have a timeline that has all these dates with all the events from the book of Revelation in this timeline. And because Revelation gives us day counts, we can actually know when certain events are going to happen with relation to other events on a timeline. So like I said before we know if we're going to be raptured or not, we have to see these stars being cast to the earth. That is angels coming. I don't know what they'll look like, whether it's looks like actual stars coming down or spaceships or aliens, or I have no idea, but we'll know it when we see it. And this intense war in Israel, where it looks like she's about to take her last breath, and then we'll be changed, and 8 days after we're changed, that's when the rapture will occur. So I don't believe in a signless rapture. There are plenty of signs that had to take place before we can be raptured. The first one being the Revelation 12 sign, which is fulfilled at this point, and now we're simply waiting for the sign of the dragon, which comes after the great sign of Revelation 12, 1 and 2. All right, so I hope you've enjoyed the video. Give me a thumbs up. I hope you'll share this with somebody, and we'll see you on another video. Till then, have a blessed day.